I know, I'm pretty sure I know.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again on Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show, broadcasting live from the 2024 AHR Expo here in Chicago, Illinois. So we're going to continue our conversation about workforce development and things that are transitioning in our industry, especially with technology and refrigerants. And we're joined by three of our major manufacturers. We have Johnson Controls, we have Daikin, we have Fujitsu, and it's an opportunity for an entire industry to see that we are all evolving together. So it's not just manufacturers that are making changes because they felt like it was something new. It's not chemical manufacturers changing the refrigerants because it's time to come up with a new refrigerant, right? We're talking about international treaties. We're talking about acts of Congress. We are making an effort to advance an entire industry in a relatively short period of time. I always make the connection to like the automotive industry, right? A lot of us grew up working on our own vehicles. We worked on carburetors. We adjusted distributors by using a timing light. And by the 1980s, 1990s, we wanted to make that internal combustion engine more efficient. So we just added solid state controls to measure temperatures and pressures. And we started mapping them and we started making improvements to a relatively similar internal engine. And that entire industry took a shift. So I got to learn how to measure voltages on MAP sensors and measure resistance on temperature sensors and EGR sensors as I was moving away from carburetors. And by the time another decade came along, there wasn't any more carburetors, right? So the automotive industry made a shift. And so we started seeing national certifications for technicians to be able to learn new technologies because they had to. They had things to learn. And so we're seeing the exact same thing in the HVAC and refrigeration sectors. So we have a lot of new technologies that we're transitioning into that we have to get comfortable with. And so I'm so glad that we're all here talking about these things together. So let's all introduce each other and a little bit of your background in the industry. Let's go ahead and start with you, Nick.
Sure. Thanks, Clifton. Hi, my name is Nick Harbeck. I'm a manager of regulatory and environmental affairs with Johnson Controls. Been in the industry for about 7 years, mainly focused on the refrigerant transition, like you mentioned, trying to see how we can kind of not only comply with regulations, but push the envelope on what our company can do, what we can do as an industry, and kind of lead into the next generation of technologies that are coming out. It's not just refrigerants alone, it's not just training alone, it's not just heat pumps alone, it's everything all together. So looking forward to today's discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
My name is Ben Middleton. I'm the National Sales Training Manager for Daikin Comfort Technologies. Been in the industry for a little bit over 25 years.
Nice.
And so I've seen a lot of changes that we've gone through. We've going from R22 to 410A, watching us go from a standing pilot in the furnaces and then going into an intermittent and going in, And so, we've gone through a lot of transformative change within this industry that we've seen over the last 25 years. And it's exciting to see where the industry is going to be going in the next couple of years. I think change is only accelerating. It's getting faster and faster and faster. But with all of that change comes a lot of opportunity for the contractors willing to embrace that change and lead.
That's really what it comes down to, is helping people understand the opportunities as a contractor, as a distributor, as a training facility, as an educator, that there are lots of opportunities in all of this.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Hey, and I'm Derek Paul. I'm the Director of Sales for Commercial Products for Fujitsu. So I oversee the sales of the VRF products. So if we talk about the transitions of refrigerants, we can make the change in the technology. We can get it in the warehouse. But if the folks that I manage don't do what they do, then it just stays in the warehouse. So that implementation and getting it out in the field and understanding how to apply it is a critical component. So I think it's great that you got kind of a wide range here between training, regulatory, and understand the sales process. Because we all know that in the absence of sales, there's no business here.
That is true.
we all need to sell something today. And for me, I've been in the HVAC industry about 15 years, but you look at me and I'm not that young of a guy, but my background is mechanical engineering, came out of school, and I began my career working in manufacturing. I started working in plants where we were going through and automating, taking out ladder logic and relay-driven logic in these plants to go into PLC logic.
You mean another industry transition? Oh my goodness.
But one of the valuable things is one of the things we were doing in that first manufacturing plant I worked in was transitioning to variable speed drives.
Yes,
So the origin of my whole career was going from old DC-based rheostat, variable speed, to solid state, VFD control of multiple devices within that manufacturing environment. When I got into the HVAC industry and got into VRF, I read the data and I'm like, That's exactly what I did when I got out of college. It's the same stuff. That's how a VRF unit operates. Is
Yeah.
how you would operate a manufacturing facility.
It's all logic.
So walking into it with that background and that understanding has just been, it's a great base to walk into the industry.
Yeah.
But we talk about moving to inverter-driven equipment.
Yes.
This is not a new move. It's a new move in HVAC for the last 15, 20 years. But this has been a move through all industries for the last
It is
30.
So, indeed.
So
Yeah, so every industry is making transitions right now. And I like to talk about these refrigerant transitions because our industry tends to look at it going, well, why are we doing this? No one else is, not realizing everyone else is.
Right.
Everyone that uses a refrigerant is making a transition. So it's understanding what that looks like and understanding that we are really doing good in all of this and that we have the ability to impact the world that we live in by moving to modern technologies. Now, the adapting to it is where we're struggling, right? I always feel like we're ringing a bell and we're dragging an industry along because a lot of people don't want to take the transition. One of the topics that kind of sparked this discussion is I had a podcast with a manufacturer where we were talking about how in 2024 they were only going to have one model of contactor-driven single-stage outdoor units for residential. Everything else is going to be inverter or a combination inverter and contactor on high speed. And then we had calls from educators, we had calls from contractors saying, I think I'll just change brands this year. And I went, you know what? I have some different manufacturers and different brands, and I think we should all get together and paint the picture that we are all transitioning together.
you either make this transition or it's going to bypass you. For 12 years, we've been walking out to contractors and been having that communication. This is the direction it's going.
It is.
The contactor is going to disappear, and you're going to go to solid state electronics and variable speed.
Yeah.
It's coming. You need to make that transition earlier rather than later, or you'll watch your competitor take your business.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about efforts that each of our manufacturers are doing to move towards inverter technology. So when we talk about inverter technology, yes, we're talking about a principle. So we could all teach on inverter technology. When we get to the equipment itself, then we start getting specifics, right? And so that's where we have to make sure that, yes, we got to bring our inverters into the classrooms. We've got to understand how they're operating, but we also have to have the right resources for the equipment that we're working on. So, Nick, let's start with JCI. Let's talk about what you are seeing in the residential inverter sector.
Yeah, great question, Clifton. And I think the main theme here is growth, right?
Yes,
There's been
growth.
a huge
Absolutely.
increase in uptake on folks wanting to use this new technology.
Yes.
And frankly, it requires effort on both the manufacturer's side of things and the contractor and installer.
Indeed.
You know, we have a responsibility to provide training related to the actual products itself. We've been recently revamping a lot of our training programs to that end, but we also have to have the technology available. So when we're talking about transitions, we have, compressor-specific transitions and refrigerant-specific transitions and new product improvements that all are kind of happening in concert. At the same time, which, provides somewhat of an opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas if you can do all of this thing at the same time,
in one class.
getting the one training up now covers all these different things. So we have obviously new product launches coming out that are featuring all of these new technologies simultaneously, and the training is commensurate with that. So it's being able to take a look at, hey, new product X is coming out in July. How can we get everybody up to speed to this and get it in people's homes to save energy and money at the end of the day?
So,
Yeah, one of the big challenges that we see is there are facets to this, right? You've got your salespeople that need to be trained, you've got your technicians that need to be trained, and then even the people in the back office and in the office that need to understand what to do. The prices have been going up on equipment. That's no secret, and as we're looking at the technology improving, so then comes in the question of affordability. And so some of the pricing models, you have to look at how is a contractor going to be profitable as they continue to offer inverters and they're still making them affordable for the homeowner out there. And so there has to be a lot of education on that side of the business. There has to be a lot of education for the salespeople on how they talk to consumers. So often, even today, there's a lot of contractors whose comfort advisors or selling technicians go out into the home or even into a business and they make assumptions that the homeowner wants the lowest price. And so they don't even offer all of the options that are available. Then there's the application side. As the equipment becomes more advanced, more technical, the tolerances become a lot more tighter. And so if you had a system that was that you had 10 or 12 years put in, and it was a single-stage system.
Let's say it was
DSC
driven, running on an inch of static.
And let's say it was a
actually
3-ton
ran.
system. you may not be able to go ahead and put in a 3-ton inverter there. And so it's so
true.
important to do a heating and cooling load to make sure that you're matching up the equipment, you're looking at the AHRI data, and then the airflow requirements are absolutely critical when you get into inverter-driven systems,
Especially in
making
the
sure
heat
you're
pump side
delivering the
of things.
BTUs that you want to deliver, and that the system is performing the way and getting the efficiency that you had promised with that inverter system. And so the application side is really, really important as we start to educate contractors on that side of it. And then, of course, there's the commissioning.
Yeah.
When the technicians or the installers are going out, it used to be, okay, we're going to set it and forget it, and the system, it worked, even if it wasn't set up absolutely perfectly. But now we're starting to see when the technicians are putting in, that commissioning is so critical. So it's all of those pieces. It's the pricing, it's the promotion of, it's the marketing that you're doing, it's the app sales and application, and then it's the final install and commissioning.
You know, Derek, you can probably speak on this one. One of the things that kind of goes hand in hand with this, as we're talking about contractors that are now working with technologies, I personally think that the residential should start looking at a third job role. When we talk traditionally in residential contracting, we talk about installation and we talk about service. But when we're talking about commercial VRV and VRF systems, that's really not the case. A lot of times we have a third person in there that is more of a commissioning technician. And I'm sure you see a lot of that in the commercial side. Do you see that as being a potential new job opportunity in the residential sector?
I think it could be. Kind of going back to what some of the other guys were saying, if you really look at residentially, we apply our single phase VRF products residentially on a consistent basis.
Right.
One of the largest hurdles we face is the preconceived idea of what the product is. So everyone says, hey, we're going to go ductless. I've got a 4,500 square foot house and I've got 22 rooms, so I need 22 wall mounts. Well, when you talk about price and applying the product, that's when you bump into that price. Well, that's really cost prohibitive. We also make ducted systems, and if you look at all of us, one of our largest growth points has been in the ducted side of the business. I always tell the folks on our team, we don't live like the Japanese. We're not in a 300 square foot apartment. We typically have we spread out a little bit more.
Right.
So understanding how to apply it. But going back to that, the commissioning or that I believe you will reach a point. We've already seen this in some municipalities in some areas where you've always got that backside commissioning confirmation of the performance of the system. We're seeing that really in the areas that are driven off of rebates.
Yes.
You know, in North America, where a rebate's a deal, it's a deal, and where it's not, they've never heard of it. But it's really dependent upon what area of the country you're in.
Yeah.
But I think that's where you'll see that is that confirmation for those rebates to go back in. I mean, we've seen some situations where, you know, maybe they needed 3 tons and they put 10 tons in because they could get all the money for that. So, you know, that's one of those things that I do. Those rebates drive that confirmation on the backside.
You know, the other big piece on when you take a look at commercial versus residential, you have that also position of that designer engineer that designs the system.
Absolutely. Big
And
difference.
so when I take a look at residential, one of the things I've been saying, instead of saying we have comfort advisors, we're almost kind of moving away from that into a comfort engineer, somebody that's coming in there and is doing all of the calculations with the homeowner. And just imagine how that differentiates you. And I talked about this, alluded to it before. Those contractors that get on in the early leading edge of this and are part of that early majority as far as adopters are going to be able to realize the most in terms of margin and profitability. Once you get on the back end of that and you're a late adopter or even a laggard with the technology, that's when everything has become commoditized and the profit margins aren't there. And so you want to make sure that you're leading and moving forward instead of waiting and seeing how everybody else does this and then trying to play catch up.
Yeah.
I agree.
And one quick point just on these rebates that we're talking about. Ben, you mentioned affordability before as well. I mean, we've seen a huge upswell in the amount of rebates that are available,
a lot
whether it's
available.
federal,
Yeah.
state, local, etc. And based on some analysis we've done, frankly, to get some of these rebates for heat pumps, for example, it's going to require things that are SEER 2 17.2 and above, and you have to be an inverter to hit that something.
Absolutely, you do.
And that's where this new technology is really key. And I mean, once again, bouncing back into heat pumps a little bit, how can we make sure that we're minimizing callbacks on, you know, customer complaints? Getting refrigerant charge dialed in on a heat pump is so important because of that zero-sum relationship between cooling and heating optimization. So you want to make sure the customer is happy and they can save a lot of money. But to do that, you got to be properly trained in the new technology.
And that brings up a good question. I've always, I ask a lot of contractors, I ask a lot of educators about this. Now, from a manufacturer perspective, do you think it's time that we really start focusing on a nationally recognized certification for inverter commissioning, installation? You know, when we talk about that transition that happened in the automotive, ASE kind of took a forefront and said, hey, we have new technologies. Not only do you need to be trained, you have to be trained, and the consumer is going to expect that you have had training for the products that you're going to be selling. I would love to see that happening in our industry. If it doesn't, I still promote that we've got to get comfortable with this technology because it really is the transition that we are seeing right now. I mean, let's talk about how inverters have changed the product lines for residential. What have each of you seen for the transition in residential based on inverters? Because I know one manufacturer I talked to, they said that 2 years ago they were about 30% inverter and 70% single stage. And they're anticipating for 2024 for that to be inverted and to be about 70% inverter cells and 30% single stage cells.
Well, for me, it's almost that's what we sell as inverter-driven equipment. So we've been forward with that equipment, and as we look over our shoulder, we see the traditional unitary manufacturers in North America. You see them coming into it, and I think 10 years ago there were a lot of struggles in that transition into the inverters. If you look at everyone that was using a Copeland inverter scroll, there was a learning there that, you know, there was a lot of firmware updates. There was a lot of board changes because it was a new product. And anytime you're dealing with new technology, there's a learning process there that you need to get the experience. Experience is, I always say, bad thing about experience is only one way to get it.
Right.
So what we've seen is the unitary manufacturers with that 10, 12 years of experience are going, okay, now we know better how to design with this equipment. And we're starting to see traditional unitary manufacturers transition more to that horizontal draw-through footprint,
Yes.
So that you can actually get the unit in the backyard and not over the fence.
Yeah, and get it through the gate. Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at that adoption curve that I was talking about, on the very bleeding edge is the innovator. And so I think we've had the innovators that have been out there that, to your point, have been really, helping us to learn how to put together what we need to do. And that's why I talk about we're in this phase of this early adopter phase right now, where the innovators have kind of blazed the trail.
Oh, yeah.
And really started to make it easier for contractors to get into this early adopter phase. And it's exciting. There's so many tailwinds that are driving all this right now. You talked about regulation. You take a look at the promise of what's happening with the IRA, and eventually that's going to be rolling out into the states. And so I know we're going to see a lot of push for heat pumps and
Absolutely
electrification with that. I think there's over 2,700 different utility rebate programs right now across North America. And so there's a lot of opportunity that we see with that as far as, again, driving towards inverter technology, driving towards heat pump. And we're even starting to see builders that are really embracing this at a high level. And you see even in New York and what you would typically think as cold weather climates, where there's whole entire subdivisions that don't even have gas that's run into it.
Absolutely.
And so we're really seeing this all of these tailwinds really starting to push towards this technology, creating a ton of opportunity.
Yeah. No, I just agree and echo what everybody said. I mean, Clifton, to your point earlier, it really is a switch in the way that
It is.
the uptake of these new technologies are being borne out. And even more than just like the true performance benefits of this new inverter stuff, we see other benefits too. The sizing of the outdoor unit is changing, which makes it sometimes easier in some applications. And sound, for example, we've seen some states require
noise levels.
really strict noise level
Absolutely we
restrictions.
do.
And now you have a solution.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you want me to tune this? No problem. Let me tune this thing.
And that's where I'm talking about that transition, that horizontal draw-through footprint. Traditional unitary manufacturer says an outdoor unit should look like this.
Right.
So to get that efficiency, it gets 4 foot by 4 foot, and it's 8 foot tall. And you go, what size is that? It was 3 tons. It's bigger than the gate.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. One of the things I like to bring to the awareness of young technicians coming into the industry is the opportunity for them as well. And that's why I encourage our programs to really move into the technology, because our young technicians that grew up, with electronics, they understand how to work with communicating equipment, right? May not be in an HVAC system, but they understand how communication devices work. They're built on technology. And then we have the the young automotive technicians that learn that, oh, I can take a product and I can become really good at tuning a product. And I tell our HVAC technicians, our up and coming technicians, did you know that you could be that person in our industry? Because with inverter technology, it's not a cookie cutter product like it has been in the past. A single stage or two stage unit, I had limited capability with it. I had to design my system around the BTUs that it would produce. Hopefully I could get my airflow set properly. Hopefully I can get my charge set properly. Hopefully I can do what that product was designed to do. With inverters, now we can custom tune things. I can take an inverter and I can set so many points within that piece of equipment that I can now take a product and I can fine tune and I can custom tailor that and I can get a product that can do so much more than the product selections that we have had in the past. And so I always encourage these technicians, think outside of the box. As a contractor, think outside of the box. Think about what you can do with this piece of technology, not just what that technology has done for you.
Well, I think the big thing is also the combinations of hardware, right, if you will.
Yes.
So, I mean, you have so many choices of outdoor units, indoor units, and so many different combinations of what you can do, which, again, it gives these unlimited almost possibilities as far as what you can do. But the other thing is, it really does have to be designed. And so what I think is exciting, there's a lot of people that are saying, well, I don't know if I want to get into, the blue collar trades. I mean, one of the biggest challenges we've had in our industry for a long time is the skills gap, right?
Yep, absolutely it is.
But now as you start to look at technology coming into it and you start to look at how training is evolving and changing, I think there's a huge opportunity for us to get more people excited about coming into the trades and into the
100%
field,
agree.
because it's not, there's still the manual labor of, working in crawl spaces and working in attics. That's not going to go away.
That'll never go away in our career.
But
piece of it.
there is so much opportunity to work with technology, and with that is also going to come higher wages.
Yep.
And as the skill sets develop, which will be more attractive to people coming into our industry.
Well, it's how are you investing in yourself?
Yes,
Indeed. Do you want a job? Do you want a trade? Do you want a skill? If you're not investing in yourself long term, you should. If you don't put money in the bank, your returns are probably very low. So if you're not investing in yourself the same way, whether that's learning more about the industry, learning more about the trade, even if from my standpoint, being an engineer, are you spending the time to expand your knowledge and understanding of the product? Do you spend time going through the manuals? One of the best documents we make is a service manual.
Oh, absolutely.
And all the time we'll have a technician go, well, you guys won't let us you won't really tell us how it works. Read that book.
That's how I've got where I
It goes
am.
into great detail.
Right.
My manuals.
And I said, if you'll read it, you'll be the most knowledgeable guy for about 15 miles.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the early movers get recognized and
Yes.
compensated
Sure they will.
appropriately. I mean, I'm from Minnesota. There's a program there called the Consortium for the Center for Energy and the Environment. And there's a whole dedicated section of the website that works with our state energy office to make sure that the installers and contractors that can install and do this equipment are listed there in the first ones that people call when they're trying to upgrade their home.
I see a lot more of that going forward. Let's talk about training just for a minute.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is very important for contractors and educators to understand is that there are resources for you. We do this kind of communication to help you know where you can go for resources. If I am a school and I'm looking to bring inverters into my program, I should know that I've got my manufacturers to help me along with this. I'm sure you can all tell us how much training has escalated for you in this year. Let's talk about this for just a second so that people understand that the training from the manufacturers is very much alive when you go to look for that.
Yeah, I mean, I can maybe start here, but I'm sure Ben and Derek have a lot more to say. We've completely revamped our training programs. We have a Ducted Systems Academy,
Yes.
and we've transformed it holistically. So you can, dive deep into working with residential systems, whether it's inverters, specific products, furnaces, etc. But it's critical to getting this transition happening faster.
Yes. And so what's the connection for that? Where would people go to look for that?
I mean, there's a website, not to shill, but you can check the website. Otherwise, we apply it through some of our partnerships. So we have a community college partnership program with a couple dozen colleges around the United States.
Nice.
And we're in the field working with our suppliers and distributors to make sure that this information is getting out and getting out rapidly.
Excellent. Ben?
So, I mean, I run the HVAC Learning Campus, so it's hvaclearningcampus.com, and on there, we really look at a lot of different things. People are looking for information in many different forms. I think it's still very important to have the live, in-person, hands-on training, and we're building training classes all over training locations all over North America to make sure that we help to lift the skills of heat pumps. But then we live in a TikTok generation. You look at a lot of the younger people that are out there right now, and so we partner up with people like XOI Technologies and are able, when they're on the job site, they can just go ahead and click on the QR code that's on the unit. And that will bring up all the installation manuals and everything else, because we're finding, guess what? A lot of people don't read the books, but they want to have these quick little 15, 20-second videos that shows, hey, where do I put this wire? How do I do that? And so makes it very simple, very easy. And then we also see that VR technology is becoming bigger and bigger. At
VR in the last
CES, we saw just all kinds of VR technologies that were happening out there at the CES show. But with VR, you're able to still do that experiential learning where they're in there and they're getting that muscle memory and in building that as they're working with the thing. So that reinforces what they learned in the classroom. Or how many times have you set up a workshop and the person wants to come and it gets hot or cold that day and now they can't show up to that live class? Nice thing about VR, it's on demand, and so it's something that they can do when they are slow, and they can continue to learn the skills that they need to learn to be effective out there. So I think it's expanding. It's definitely leveraging technology as we continue to move forward.
Absolutely it is.
Well, my dad's 80 years old. Anytime anything breaks, what's his resource for the repair?
YouTube, probably.
YouTube.
Yeah.
So, and
Right.
you go, well, that's not really a resource to go to. We're in that crowdsourced environment.
Yes.
That's where we're getting a lot of that transfer of data. And doesn't mean you always get the best data, but there's enough volume out of it out there. And we're starting to see more on the contracting side. You say the TikTok generation. We have people that do great jobs that they want to build the community. They want to build the trade. So they like to demonstrate the ability to do projects. And a lot of times they're giving that kind of feedback on your systems. And in this environment, as the way the world is today, if you're not utilizing those resources, then you're bypassing that helpful guy that wants to share his knowledge with you.
Yeah, like
I
the
think
Ty
that's a
Brannovans
positive
of the
thing.
world. Ty's out here somewhere with us.
And I mean, and we were at Hardy recently, and Hardy was talking about the A2L transition. They've actually got a chat bot that they're going to promote to the members, to where that you can go to the chat bot and have it explain to you everything you need to know about A2Ls in a conversational format.
Yes.
We have to understand that that's the future of our industry too.
True.
I know there's some discussions of, you think about traditional scheduling techniques for commercial buildings. That's always been kind of graphical. It's been
Manual.
It's like trying to, solve a three-dimensional puzzle. We're going to move to the point where you'll just ask it to go, this is how I work. Could you make sure I'm comfortable?
Absolutely.
And that technology is going to be on the backside of it. We're working on cloud-based controls technologies to where we can have that sort of edge computing model, to where we bring the data in and we can have it on the backside through resources like on AWS, to where you've got those machine learning AI models that drive that. We're not really there yet, but that's the direction we're
it's
going
another
to.
transition that we will see as an industry.
I mean, everybody wanted a Nest thermostat because it supposedly learned how to live. They get it, and the backside of it wasn't that great. It just means that it was confused when you wanted to be warm and when you wanted to be cold, right? People get mad at them. But I think as that technology advances, that's what you're going to see.
Absolutely. You just mentioned another thing too that we should probably talk about when we're talking about transitions. We've spent a lot of time talking about equipment transitions, but we are all going through refrigerant transitions as well. And as technicians and as educators, we have to understand that it's not like when we went through our R22 phase out, where we had a product in place, a singular product to replace R22 as a primary new refrigerant. As we make these transitions, we're going to see a variety of refrigerants being used in equipment. Some manufacturers using multiple refrigerants. Can we talk just a little bit about what we're seeing for A2L refrigerants going into residential and maybe even commercial products for this next year?
For us, we're for our residential products, we're taking that tack towards more the R32. If you look at it, it's a technology that we have long-term um, knowledge of.
Right.
This is not the first time we've built R32 equipment. We've sold this equipment, worldwide for multiple years.
Right.
And I know every manufacturer has done that, especially the ones that for the Asian manufacturers. So for us, it's a natural transition. The big thing for us in North America is our building codes don't necessarily play very well with that A2L refrigerant.
I know, we're all struggling with it.
You think in this transition, I think that's what you're going to see is we're going to make the transition. Then we're going to have to work on the building codes to understand, what is
that
really
transition
safe, and how
was.
do we protect the consumer? How do we make a safe building?
Yes.
And right now, the codes aren't very friendly to it.
So we'll see a lot of R32 in Fujitsu. Well, Daikin, of course.
Yeah.
We should see probably
Daikin,
32.
we looked at all of the options that were out there, and we wanted to figure out, what we figured would be the best as we looked at the North American market. And like Fujitsu, we have a lot of experience with R32. It's been out in the market since 2012, and so it's been there for a long time. And what we looked at, what I would say the biggest challenge right now with the refrigerants is making sure contractors know the facts.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a ton of
Way too
misinformation
much.
that has been floating around. I still hear contractors say, we're going to propane. And, well, wait a second. Well, we're not going to
We get the
propane.
calls
It's an
at the
A2L.
office every day.
So there's a difference. It's not an A3.
Right.
And so just helping contractors understand what an A2L is, they're going to have, I'm sure there's going to be consumers that may have some concern.
What's this fun little sticker on my equipment?
Yeah.
Somebody
And
get me a different box.
So, that education process to consumers, I think there's a lot of scare tactics out there as far as, when are things going to be phased down and what's happening there. And so, again, just being very factual, I think, is the most important thing that everybody can do out there in laying out the facts that the reason we're going to an A2L is because we're trying to get the global warming potential down. We're trying to look at the environment. And Daikin looked at it and we said, there's two sides to the equation. There's the direct impact from the chemical, and there's also the indirect impact from the overall life cycle of the system. And so we like to look at the life cycle climate performance and really, where are we going to get the most efficiency? Where are we going to be able to use the least amount of refrigerant?
Yes.
Where are we going to be able to maybe make smaller units, use less commodities in the building and the manufacturing of the product? And when we put all of those pieces together, we decided R32 seemed to be the best choice for us, even though it's not the easiest transition. Transitioning from 410A to R32, there's a lot of engineering and design work
Absolutely,
that needs to
there
go
is.
on.
Yeah.
And when you're going from 410A to 454B, that almost can work like a drop-in and can be easier for a manufacturer. But we kind of decided we wanted to take the hard path because we believe long-term that's the right solution to move to.
And what about Johnson Controls, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, likewise, we're also going to be using R32 in some applications, but Ben, you did touch on it a little bit. R454B is primarily going to be the solution you'll probably see for most, residential and light commercial products. For a couple of reasons, like you mentioned, Ben, it's very similar to R410A, which is nice from an application perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, it's like a drop-in. It's not a drop-in because of that A2L characteristic. But being able to use similar operating pressures, having similar experience with the compressor itself is, we think, going to be useful and handy. And, back to the ultimate goal of what this transition is trying to do is lower GWP. Having that lower global warming potential threshold on R454B, we think is going to be advantageous for the U.S. as a whole. I mean, Clifton, you mentioned there's a phase down happening with this refrigerant transition. So finding ways to get the GWP as low as possible while still maintaining the serviceability of existing equipment and future equipment that gets installed is going to be critically important, whether that's through the technology transitions that we manufacturers are making or within the recovery of refrigerant within the field. And so the more we can do everything all at the same time, the better served we'll be going into 2036, 2040, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually going to be spending some time. Jason Abjut from our team is going to be doing a podcast on Wednesday, and we're going to be specifically talking about just refrigerants.
Perfect.
So a lot to talk about in the industry. While we got a little bit of time left, one topic that I like to bring up, and people think I'm crazy, but I love monoblock air-to-water heat pumps.
We are so excited.
Right? So the technology is being used internationally. We even see A3 applications of it because now we don't have refrigerant in the structure at all, which changes the entire building code perspective. I got to see quite a few last year at AHR. Am I going to see more of them this year?
I think the answer is yes, yes, and yes from all of us.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're also very excited. This is a huge opportunity for the
It
United
is.
States. We'll be launching a product this year, probably likely around March. And
Really?
being able to address a entirely, I guess, unaddressed market in the past. New England. Anybody living in New England,
Anyone
there's
with
a solution.
water source in-
You can now run your radiators off a heat
Right.
pump.
You have a boiler, we have a drop-in solution for you.
It's
Let's
amazing.
talk about this. Okay, so we will be seeing some
Absolutely.
air-to-water, monoblock, probably heat pump technology
Right.
coming from Johnson Controls. What about Daikin?
Yeah, we've got the product here. It's in the booth, so encourage
right.
everybody to stop by and take a
will
look.
be
We've got
for
our
sure.
L-Therma
Daniel,
product.
write
We're
that
very
down.
excited about that. It's a technology we've been using in Europe for a long time, and it definitely has worked well in that market.
Yeah.
And to your point, very excited about New England and what we can do in that market. Also in the upper Midwest, there's a ton of inflorescent systems and other systems that people are going to be able to take advantage,
Sure.
not only of the efficiency, but also the space savings.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the capabilities of it,
Yes.
it just opens up a whole new opportunity for system designing that we're
Absolutely.
talking about before. What about in Fujitsu?
Well, Fujitsu globally sells air-to-water systems. We're
have
looking
seen
at
that.
what, on the commercial side of the business that I support, it's really interesting because when you get out in the field, what gets asked for varies depends upon where you're at.
Oh, yeah,
Some
absolutely.
place they want residential, domestic hot water, and some place they want to be able to use it for, for other heating, domestic heating. When you look on the commercial side, there's hey, we're in cooling here. There's a lot of BTUs we can grab and use in the facility. So I think we're looking at the multiple different ways in which we could get into a platform to be able to support that. But like you said, if you go into an environment where they say we're going to decarbonize, you can't put in gas. So now I've got to heat my water with an electric resistance, and that really low COP there.
Yes.
So,
Right.
For sure. Well, I personally see that as being a technology for us to be prepared for. I think it's going to come faster than most people anticipate. I anticipate that all of them will be inverter because those are very high performing systems. So it just pushes that drive to understand what inverter technology is, to get comfortable with it now, introduce it into the classroom, get our technicians, bring our existing technicians into this new understanding of a technology. Because I could be the best technician in the field, but if I've never walked up to an inverter, I've got a lot of training and a lot of catch up to do because it's a different animal. It operates differently. It runs at a internal control that is much like an automobile, where it's measuring temperatures, it's measuring pressures, it's trying to optimize itself. And so it will run characteristically different than a traditional single stage or two stage, non-variable capacity system. So a lot of new opportunities in our industry.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about contractors taking advantage of these new opportunities. Well, what about a school? If I'm a school, why wouldn't I be taking advantage of new opportunities to prepare students to be able to have them ready for placement in the industry? So as an entire industry, we have a lot of education to do. We have a lot of new technologies. Let's talk about ways that an industry can move forward together. I know we're going to see Fujitsu, we're going to see Johnson Controls, we're going to see Daikin moving into this. Let's talk about continuing resources. So I know within each of our training departments, with each of our manufacturers, we have training that's available digitally. We kind of talked about some of these resources. Do you see manufacturers doing more training this year than in previously for contractors on new equipment?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is yes, it has to be. Mainly because of all these transitions taking place, the technology is changing, and as these new products roll out, whether it's from JCI, Daikin, Fujitsu, whoever else,
Yep.
being able to master that new technology and implement it in the field is ultimately going to make you a lot of money.
Yes.
And that's a gap right now. But as we roll out some new programs, again, through us, through our Ducted Systems Academy, and through others, through schools, et cetera, and the partnerships that we have, that's going to fix that gap and get us ready for essentially January 1st, 2025, and everything officially translates over.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. What are we doing to prepare?
Yeah, so we've already started. We've had a couple of big road shows where we've gone out regionally and have done big classes. Like I said, there's many things. So it's sales and application, it's pricing, and then it's the installation and commissioning. If you just kind of take those three buckets, we have a big transition to do as we're getting the industry ready as we transition and move into it. You know, I think back, you know, you took a look in the 1980s. There was a big push for heat pumps in the 1980s as well. Yeah. Guess what? The technicians weren't ready.
Nope.
And what ended up happening was a lot of heat pumps were put in wrong. And so then everybody said, guess what? Heat pumps don't work. I'm going back to the old, you know, safe space where I need to go. And we can't, as an industry, afford to do that as we're trying to solve all of these different challenges. So we need to make sure that we're offering the training classes, but then also that we're filling up these training classes. Yes. And so that's the big challenge I have to every distributor, every territory sales manager that's out there, making sure that they get their customers to attend as many of these training events as possible, because that's how we really move the needle in our industry.
Absolutely.
And I think even beyond the classroom is making sure that you're in the field with the contractors so that they're supported, that as we introduce new products, that they know that the manufacturer's there to support them and see through the transition. You know, the first step's to not be afraid of it.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's refrigeration.
Yeah.
So it's understand that maybe change, and maybe some differences, maybe some things you have to learn, but at the end of the day, it's still air conditioning, and the fear of it is the worst thing you can have. So we need to make sure that they're supported. I had a contractor one time, I was working with him, and he's like, "Oh, well, this isn't like regular air conditioning." I said, "That's all it is air conditioning." A 20 SEER inverter unitary system commissions and starts up different than a 13 SEER straight cool. I said, they're different. It doesn't mean that more difficult. Your fear is what keeps you from wanting to invest the time and effort to learn. So we've got to make sure we're hand in hand with our contractors to get past that fear aspect of it, so they can move forward with it.
Excellent. All right. Well, gentlemen, that's a lot of great stuff, a lot of inverter technology, a lot of refrigerant technology. So I encourage all of you to join us every week. We bring different trainers from the industry on our Did You Know, the ESCO HVAC show, where we talk about this firsthand because so many things are happening. We have a presence from all of our manufacturers at the National HVACR Education Conference. We have Train the Trainer events by manufacturers at the conference. We look forward to growing together as an industry. We all have our parts to do in this industry, and it's so great to be able to sit down with manufacturers at the AHR Expo. I'm looking forward to stopping by everybody's booth and see some new technologies. And any last parting thoughts before we hop out of here?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Clifton, again for having us. Yeah. This topic is so important, and it's so timely.
It is.
We have essentially 1 year runway to make the best of this time period and get ready for the future. And you know, as manufacturers, I think we have a responsibility in both the training aspect, and Derek, you mentioned this earlier, making sure that we're reducing those regulatory barriers, getting those building codes in place so that we're positioned for a transition where we're on the leading edge rather than trying to follow and stay behind.
Love it. Yep.
Yeah, the biggest thing I can say is embrace the change. I mean, all of the early adopters, that's where you're going to find the most profitability. That's where you're going to find the biggest opportunities for your business to grow. That's where you're going to attract the best talent as they see that you truly are that innovator in your space. So make sure that you're embracing this change. You're not resisting it. You know, lean into it as hard as you possibly can.
Yeah. And like I said, appreciate you giving us this opportunity to come and be a part of this today. And to that point, you know, let's move forward without fear, and understand that we've got the knowledge and the ability, and we can handle this.
Absolutely, we can. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this year at the 2024 AHR Expo. I encourage all of you to stop by each of our manufacturers. Form a partnership. Say, hey, I want to learn more about what you're doing. How can we work together? How can we move this industry forward together? And I'd love to catch you all again sometime soon on one of my shows.
All right. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I noticed. I'm pretty sure who I'm